What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron. It's Tuesday morning, which means we're getting into our Week 11 waiver wire must-adds. We're going to go through 10 players. We have some wide receivers, some running backs, some tight ends, all under 50% owned on ESPN. So let's not waste any time. If you enjoyed the video at any point, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical. My nitty bag.
Now, with these waiver wire videos, I divide the players into two parties. You have my priority ads, which are players that I would bid 15% or more of my fab budget on, guys that you should be spending a good chunk of change on, and then just ads that you should just be getting when they roll in after waivers or for like $0 of fab. And when we talk about our must-add priority ad type guys, we have Isiah Pacheco, Rutgers boy, and he's someone where it's tough because he didn't light up the stat sheet or anything, but he is probably the number one waiver wire ad this week. He only had 5.2 PPR points, but it's really more the usage here. He had 16 carries, 82 yards. He had a fumble, but it didn't really affect his playing time. It seemed like they still trusted him or whatever. He handled 16 of 18 of the running back rushes. He had 55% of the snaps. He ran just 2 less routes than McKinnon. Overall, really good usage. And you look at here, he has essentially completely taken over Clyde Edwards-Helaire's role. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 4 snaps to Isiah Pacheco's 35. He led the entire backfield. And Pacheco's now in that role that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is in, or was in from like those first 4 or 5 weeks, where he got hot, scoring touchdowns, and he was, I'm not going to say league winner, but he was somebody where if you had him the first 5 weeks, your team was doing really well. And I think just being on this offense, it's going to score a lot of points. Pacheco's in a spot here where he could run hot and get you those big spike weeks in terms of touchdowns just because of the offense that he's on. So McKinnon's the pass catching back here. You guys can see 2-minute drill, third downs, all McKinnon, but early down stuff, all play, short yardage. I think goal line is going to be more of an even split between Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. There was only 1 goal line snap, so not really a big sample there. But they get the Chargers next week, who are allowing the 3rd most fantasy points to running backs. Pacheco should be in line to be like a fringe top 30-ish play. So, if you have like a Fournette on bye or something like that and you need an instant fill-in that's in that super high-end RB3, fringe RB2 area, Pacheco's your guy. Now, we have 2 other priority ads as well. And first up, we have Rachaad White. And Rachaad White's tricky because he has a bye this week. So if you drop all of your cash on him, you can't play him right away. So if you need an immediate starter and you're one of those guys that has a running back injury or somebody on bye that you need to fill in for, I think ETN's on bye as well. Or no, I don't think, is ETN on bye? I don't know why I thought that. But again, if you have somebody on bye, you're going to need to go out there and grab somebody you can put in right away. Rachaad White isn't that guy. But if you don't need a running back immediately and you kind of have the luxury to, spend up on a premium handcuff with more upside, Rachaad White is that. He ended up this week with 22 carries and 105 rushing yards. He was efficient. He looked good. His previous highs in rush attempts were 8 attempts for 27 yards. So 22 carries and 105 rushing yards is a massive, I would say, vote of confidence in just him as a player from this Tampa Bay staff. Now, here's the tricky part. I held out so long for you guys trying to find any kind of graphic. I even tweeted out my boy Hayden Winks. I was like, hey, man, he does these really cool graphics where he does like chronological order of each running back snap in the game. Couldn't find it. So all I have is that Fournette out-touched Rachaad White 14-11 before Fournette got hurt. But Rachaad White started the game. He ended the first half. He started the second half. He was the quote-unquote starting running back. He didn't lead the running back room in touches, but he did lead it in snaps before Fournette went down. I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys that Rachaad White's going to come in here and just take control of this backfield. Leonard Fournette is a veteran on this Tampa Bay team. He was a huge part of the Super Bowl. They're not just going to kick him to the curb. But I think what was once a 65-35% snap share or time share, I think it'll be more 55-45, 50-50 split, somewhere in there. So that's something that needs to be prioritized on a team like the Bucs, where if they bounce back in any way and this offense becomes a top 5 to 10 scoring unit, that is a really valuable role. He could have a standalone role just on efficiency, big plays, if they get him involved in the passing game. That was the weird part about this game. He had 0 targets for like the first time all season. I don't think that's going to stick. I think that was more of a game script thing. They were beating up on the Seahawks until like the last 5 minutes. Regardless, he should see a little bit of a standalone role here, and then essentially he is the most valuable handcuff in the league outside of like your Tony Pollards, maybe like A.J. Dillons of the world. Now, we also have a wide receiver in our priority ads here. We have Christian Watson, who just went absolutely insane. He played for the first time in his career 90% plus of the routes. He was treated as a starting wide receiver, and he balled out. He had 8 targets, 4 catches, 107 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had a Randy Moss stat line, 32.7 points. I was fortunate enough that I started him in a couple spots just because I was that down bad. He went crazy, man. 38% target per out run, 5.1 yards per out run. Yards per out run, like Tyreek Hill's at 3.5, and he leads the league right now. 5.1 in a game is crazy. He was super efficient. Now, obviously, he's not going to maintain a 38% target per out run, a 5.1 yards per out run, but he at least flashed a lot of his upside. It's not going to hold long term, but I think that he flashed the talent. It seems like Aaron Rodgers is starting to trust him now. And with Romeo Doubs and Randall Cobb still hurt, he's going to get a shot to go out there, start again next week. And that gives him a really wide range of outcomes. Because if the snaps stay in that 85% plus territory and he maintains any kind of efficiency, he could be this year's rookie wide receiver league winner, a la Jalen Waddle, Amon-Ra St. Brown last year. So he's somebody where if he's available on waivers and you're somebody that is really struggling at flex or wide receiver, he's someone that needs to be a priority. Now, shifting off from that, we have just our normal ads here, which are just players that I would just kind of, sneak in, $0 bids, whatever you got to do. And we'll start with the running backs. And we have Jaylen Warren up top here. And he's another one. He's like budget Rachaad White, where he hit a season high in touches and PPR points. He had 9 carries for 37 yards. He had 3 catches for 40 yards, 10.7 PPR points. He played about 40% of the snaps, which is impressive for him, right? So he, I think, spelled Najee Harris the most that he's spelled him the entire year. 40% of the snaps. He was the third down back. He's cutting into the early down stuff. He's cutting into the goal line stuff. So he's not even just strictly a third down pass catching back. He's cutting into all phases essentially outside of the 2-minute drill, which Najee is still that guy on. The issue here is I don't think that this offense will ever be good enough where Jaylen Warren could not play the majority of the snaps and still give you any kind of standalone value. To me, he's still a pure handcuff, but I think that he, outside of the Rachaad Whites and the Tony Pollards and the A.J. Dillons, and I guess you could put Alexander Mattison in there as well, I think he's probably next up as the must-own handcuff, where if Najee was to go down, Jaylen Warren kind of reminds me of, obviously, with Mike Tomlin, you have the D'Angelo Williams, the James Conner years, where he just plugs and plays any running back that is on his team and gives him a bell cow amount of volume. I think Jaylen Warren would be in line for that. I just wouldn't want to give you guys false hope that he'll just take over this backfield. I think they sunk too much draft capital into Najee Harris to be we're going to start Jaylen Warren. I know that that's been some of the buzz coming out of, I guess, their practices and stuff. I just don't see a clear takeover ever really happening there. But then after that, we have Kyren Williams, who isn't the sexiest ad. It was just his first game back from injury. He's kind of a fun-ish prospect. He came out of Notre Dame, caught a lot of passes. I believe he had 2 years at Notre Dame with 35 or more receptions, which is really impressive. I would say 20 plus is pretty good for any college back. So Kyren Williams is a pass catching specialist. He kind of reminds me of Eno Benjamin, where he's this non-athletic pass catcher who's got some wiggle between the tackles. And in his first game here, he outsnapped Akers. He dominated the 2-minute drill snaps. He had 73% of the 2-minute drill snaps. He had 30% target per out run. That's solid. But he only had 6.9 PPR points. But again, it was his first start. I think he has upside for more here if they ever decide to sit Cam Akers, right, where they had that 3-game stretch where they were just Cam Akers, you're literally not going to touch the field. And they end up just using Henderson between the tackles, Kyren Williams as a pass-catching guy with, change of pace carry here and there. I think he'd be all right, especially if this offense makes any kind of improvement. It's just been so bad this year, this Rams offense, that there hasn't been a ton of fantasy value for the running game. Again, it's not the prettiest pick in the world, but I think you could do a lot better or you could do a lot worse in terms of just storing potential, handcuffs that get thrusted into a starting role on your bench. Because of like Darrell Williams or Darrell Henderson, I don't know why I said Darrell Williams, but if Darrell Henderson got hurt this week, Kyren Williams is in a really nice, juicy spot, which is kind of the thesis with a lot of these bench running backs. Now, after that, we're going to switch over to the wide receivers. And we have a guy who I debated putting in the priority ad. I would call him right in between. He's like on the fringes of a priority ad because he is somebody where, like, I don't even know if I would be comfortable starting him this week. But I do think he has a lot of upside. And if you have the luxury that you don't need somebody to give you points right away, I think Kadarius Toney is a really interesting waiver wire ad. He went absolutely bananas in his limited snaps. This is a tweet that I had for our top 10 lessons video. He ended up with 5 targets, 4 catches, 57 yards, 1 touchdown, 19.9 PPR points on just 17 snaps, which is really good. Among 30 wide receivers with 5 or more targets on Sunday, he was 6th in PFF grade, 4th in yards per out run, 4th in yak per reception, 1st in passer rating when targeted, 1st in missed tackles forced. Just across the board, making plays. He had like this one clip where he like adjusted his glove mid-route and then went up and mossed like 2 DBs. He has a ton of talent. He's kind of a weirdo. I love the clip where they're like, "Who's your favorite teammate?" or whatever. He's like Patrick Mahomes, and he just looks like a gremlin. But I love it, man. He's shifty. He makes plays. I think that Andy Reid's going to want to really scheme him in this offense. And right now you have McCole Hardman and you have Juju Smith-Schuster both dealing with injuries. So he could come out here next week and be the starting wide receiver in 2 sets with just him and Marquez Valdes-Scantling out there. But you really never know. Justin Watson gets a ton of routes in this offense. He was still behind Justin Watson in routes. I do think that he'll be moving ahead of Justin Watson in the depth chart very soon here. But again, it's tough to trust him in a lineup at this point. But I think that he probably presents the most upside at wide receiver outside of Christian Watson on waivers. After that, we have Donovan Peoples-Jones. And he's a tough one for me to grapple with because he's just not that sexy. He's like a super low ceiling wide receiver, which I don't love. Like when I put a guy in my flex spot, I want someone that can have spike weeks, right? I had Christian Watson in some lineups. He'll win you a week. Do the same thing with guys like Gabe Davis or even guys like Alan Lazard, who I don't even love, but he kind of offers you that upside. Donovan Peoples-Jones has been consistent, but I'm not sure he's given you like difference-making production. He has passed 10 or more PPR points in 4 of his last 4 games. 6 of his 9 games on the year have been over 10 PPR points. But he has no game over 15 PPR points. You have the threat of Njoku coming back soon, who is going to take away a lot of this recent success from him. I don't know if he's going to be back this week or next week, but it seems like he'll be back soon. I think if it's a deep league and you're down bad for any type of points to be in your flex, I guess he's your guy. Maybe Deshaun Watson comes in and he kind of realizes his ceiling there. I think that's being optimistic. Again, low ceiling wide receiver. I'm not all that interested in him, but I know that there's people out there that really love them. Some Donovan Peoples-Jones. Again, if you could use like 10 PPR points, I guess he's your guy. Now, after that, we have Parris Campbell, who was somebody that I was kind of ready to give up on, but he's been a stud when Matt Ryan is playing. He had 9 targets for 7 catches, 76 yards, and a touchdown this week. Had over 20 PPR points, I believe. It's just pretty crazy that I'm not going to say he's not like panning out at this point. It's like a dynasty asset, but he is producing. In his last 3 games with Matt Ryan, he has averaged 20.7 points per game. In his last 2-3 games with Sam Ehlinger, he's averaged 6.4 points per game, so just been night and day. And it seems like Jeff Saturday is going to have Matt Ryan as a starting quarterback moving forward, which means that Parris Campbell moving forward should be a fringe flex option every week. I think not even fringe. I would say pretty much a guy you can put in your flex spot every week, regardless of buys or what's going on. He could somehow probably find his way into your lineup as long as you're playing in a, like a 12-man, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex league. He's probably someone you can play every week. After that, we have Treylon Burks, who didn't do a ton, and he's kind of like Kadarius Toney, where he's not someone I would be confident to put in the lineup next week, but he's someone that offers as much upside as you can find at wide receiver on the waiver wire. He's young. He's a rookie. He has the upside like, we talk about all the time, but Amon-Ra St. Brown his rookie year, Chase Claypool his rookie year, Ayuk his rookie year, A.J. Brown his rookie year. All of these guys that went out there and, won people a lot of money in their rookie years. Now, Treylon Burks didn't go crazy. He had 3 catches, 24 yards, 5.4 PPR points, but he did have 6 targets. He had a 76.3% route participation. He's firmly in that rotation. He had a 20.6% target per route run, which is elite. Anything above 20% for rookie is really, really good. He's fresh off an injury. I didn't really expect him to go crazy, but it's nice to see that he was running routes. He was commanding targets, which is good. Again, rookie wide receivers have upside. So if you have the space to just sort of have Treylon Burks on your bench and sort of see if he ascends at any point, I think he's worth the ad. I wouldn't go head over heels for Treylon Burks, though. Now, we have one tight end on our list as well, and someone I really haven't been putting a lot of respect on this year, Kmet. He is now the tight end 1 in half PPR over the last 3 weeks, and I will say that's largely on the back of having 5 touchdowns during that stretch, and he's now, I believe, second among all tight ends in receiving touchdowns, which is wild, but if he's going to be producing like this, he's not someone that should be on waivers. He's also seeing more volume as the year goes on. He had a season-high 7 targets this week. He had a season-high, or his previous season high was 6 targets the week before. He is seeing the most volume that he's seen. He's running a fine amount of routes for tight ends. He ran 77% of the routes this week. His previous 4 weeks were 77%, 71%, 82%, 87%. 70% plus is good. 80% plus is elite. So he's right in that area. He's building a rapport with Fields now. I'd call him a streamable tight end moving forward. He's probably like a fringe top 12 guy. If you need a tight end fill-in, I think that he is probably just fine. You can sort of just fire him up whenever. And he gets Atlanta this week, who's allowing the 6th most adjusted fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Now, that is going to do it for us today. As always, make sure you check out the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. Every single Tuesday, later on today, I'm going to go sit down. I don't know why I'm so congested right now, but I'm going to go sit down, write my waiver wire article where I go through every player on this list, a bunch of other players. I go like 10 to 15 players deep at each position, and I give out how much fab I would bid on those players and a little blurb of, any important stats I think that are important to give to you guys. So if you're interested in that, my dynasty rankings, my prospect grades, rest of season rankings, weekly rankings, all that good stuff, that'll be on patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You can find that in the description or the top of the comments below. As always, if you can't contribute there, just watching the video, leaving a like, subscribing goes a really long way, especially at this point in the year. Things are coming to a close. Things are getting whittled down here, but the beauty of it is that the people who are still watching are the guys who are winning their leagues. I think that we just sort of keep shedding people that are just like eliminated from their leagues. So if you made it this far, if you're still like sort of interested in fantasy and watching these videos, it means you're probably still in the hunt. So good on you. That's going to do it for us today. I actually recorded this. I usually don't record these in the morning, but it's 10:30 a.m. Time for me to write the trade targets video for tomorrow. So as always, I appreciate you guys, and I will see you in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice.
Channel, Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper song, singer, suspended, subpoena from Mr. Mean.